Hello guys, today I'm going to be talking about different phases of an account, specifically beginner, early game, mid game, late game, and end game, and transitional phases in between. I'll explain why I included transitional phases in my perspective of how phases of an account work for Summoner's War. And I sort of did my layout for this video differently. On the top right, you'll see I'm running dragons. On the side, and then on the left I have my notes pulled up, and I did this because I want to emphasize what I'm going to be talking about on the notes, and then what I'm going to be doing for this video and whatnot, and to give you guys a better idea of what I'm talking about. So let's begin. So there's 9 different phases of an account: beginner, transitioning to early game, from beginner, early game, transitioning to mid game, from an early game, mid game, transitioning to late game, from mid game, late game, transitioning to end game, from late game, and then end game. All of these different phases of the game for an account sort of tell you where as a player do you stand. Like for early game, for example, early game you could probably clear clear giants. You are beginning to get into dragons. You could probably do a slow dragons. And then, for example, transitioning to mid game. Okay, so you have giants down pat, and then you're now working on making a better, consistent, or faster dragons team. You're starting to be able to get further in TOA and stuff like that. So that's what I mean by different phases of an account. Like, it tells you where you stand amongst the community and all that sort of stuff. And most of the stuff for phases of an account here is mainly subjective. I basically scoped where most players might be in terms of like where they stand. So let's start with beginner. So for beginner, right? Oh god. I guess okay, there we go. Oh god. Okay. So for a beginner, let's say that let's say this. Beginners are able to let's say clear Feynman. Let's not just say just Feynman. Farm for 6-star materials for future 6-star monsters. We'll say it like that. Farm for 6-star materials for future 6-star monsters, right? And then beginner players are also able to begin to get into Giants 10, if not be able to farm earlier stages of Giants. They might be also able to achieve probably TOA normal 30 to 40 based on what they have. And what else can beginner players be able to do? I think that's about it. I think this is what a beginner player should be able to do with what they have. So, I mean, as a beginner player, you don't have any good runes. Basically, you're working off of the runes that you got from your missions. So you should be having like 4-star, 5-star runes. 6-star monsters that you might have. You might have a fused Varomos by now. You might have stuff like a 6-star Darian for giants. You might have a Bella 6-starred as well. Bella will always be a good monster no matter what phase of the account you are. You might have stuff like that. You might have good supportive units that will be able to carry you into the mid game. And that's where we start into the transition to early game from the beginner phase of the account, right? So let's talk about that. So when you're transitioning to early game from a beginner account, mainly, okay, so what you want to be doing during a transition from beginner to early. We'll say it like that. Early game. So what do you want to be able, what do you want to be doing? So what you want to be doing is try to be able to make a consistent Giants 10 team, right? And with that, try to get some useful runes from Giants 10. So that's what you want to be doing mainly when you're trying to transition from beginner to early. You want to build up your rune base. Your rune base, that means like, you know, your 6-star, 5-star runes, and then trying to make your monsters on better sets. Using the runes acquired, start making a Dragons 10 team. And then you also want to flirt around the idea of completing TOA normal. And to be able to complete TOA normal is very important because you get rewards. Free to play or pay to play, you're getting a lot of resources that you didn't have, and you're saving a lot of time. If you're pay to play, you're saving a lot of money. So you want to be able to start clearing TOA normal as fast as possible to get the resources, to be able to summon more, to be able to get more crystals to farm with, all that sort of stuff. It's very important to clear TOA normal, and then play with the idea of TOA hard a little bit later on. So this is what you mainly want to be doing in the transitional phase from beginner to early. That's mainly what you want to be doing. Yeah. Okay. So for early game. Early game, you should have about 16 to 23 6-star monsters. You might have a little variety in your runes now since you farmed quite a bit. You will have more monster options. So monster options might include Nat 4s that you summon from scrolls. You might have a Nat 5 if you're lucky. You might have different options that could help you clear. You could have Beretta. Beretta's going to be helpful for TOA normal and all that sort of stuff. So, okay. So let's explain what beginner game players are able to do. I mean, early game players are able to do. Early game are able to, okay, so you have a Giants 10 team down. Giants 10 team, not as fast. You'd probably be running 1:30 to 2-minute runs in average time if you are an early game account. So as an early game account, should be able to get far in TOA. You should be able to get far in TOA, if not clear it. That's what you want to be focusing on for early game. And let's talk about key monsters for that. Key monsters for TOA. So for early game, I mean, yeah, sure, for early game. So you want stuff like Beretta, you want Bella. Let's think about other free monsters or easy to acquire monsters. Probably, not so sure. Spectra could work. Veromos is gonna help out. To finish up this team, probably Bernard could work out in your favor. I'm not so sure. I mean, it's been a while since I've been an early game player. I feel like that this team would be able to do well. It's sort of slow, but it should be able to clear most everything. I mean, you don't really need the Bernard, really. It's just to speed up your monsters. I mean, you could probably go with like a Mav. Probably like a Mav. What else are key monsters for TOA? You know, we'll just leave it at that. Those are some key monsters. I'd say that the most important is probably Beretta, Bella, Veromos. You should almost always have Veromos built up at this stage in the game. So, I'll say, if you haven't already, please use that Veromos. Okay, so Veromos, useful early game for things such as Giants 10, Dragons 10, makes it more consistent, TOA, normal, and eventually TOA hard. He's good for all of that. That's why you need to pick him up. That's why you need to pick him up. Then you also want to be playing with the idea of making a Dragon's 10 team in early game. Play around with the idea of creating a consistent Dragon 10 team. We'll talk about the key monsters for that. So, let's see. Key monsters for Dragon 10 in early game. Okay. So you have quite a few options that are farmable. So you have, So you have stuff like Bella, Veromos. These are free options. Spectra would be pretty good here. You could also do Lauren, the light cowgirl. The reason why I say Lauren, because Lauren sort of works like a Hua. She's a free-to-play Hua. At the same time, her second skill is a beneficial effect remove skill. So overall, her kit is actually really impressive. And she can be run in Dragon's 10. I've seen my guildmate run her in Dragon's 10, and it sort of works like a budget chilling. It works like a budget chilling. It works pretty well. And last monster, I mean, if you want to, you can make a Sigmaris to run in this team, and then you can make Sigmaris leader to make it more consistent. Really, I mean, I'm not saying this is the team that you should make, but these are some of the monsters that you want to sort of include. You definitely want to include Veromos early on. You definitely want to include Veromos early on in your team. Sigmaris, I feel like, is a luxury. Feel free to build him if you have the resources to. And I would say that overall, the average time for teams for early game, it'd probably be like 2:30 to 3 minutes average time. Probably at a 95% consistency. The higher consistency that you have, the better. Ideally, you want 100% for almost everything. But yeah. So this is sort of what I think an early game should be able to achieve with the tools that they have. You should have a few Nat 4s, a few, maybe like a Nat 5 that you got lucky summoning. That's basically where I think that most people would be standing if they were an early game account. So let's talk about an early game transitioning to a mid game account. Like, what do you need to do to get to mid game? So let's phrase it like, what to do to transition to mid game. So I mean, the transition to mid game is actually a very short phase. I say it's about 24 to 28 6-star monsters. You have quite a little variety in runes, relatively same options as early game, right? So what you want to do in this transition is basically what you want to be doing here. So you want a consistent Giants 10 team, consistent Dragons 10 team. Okay. You want also to be able to clear TOA normal 100. So this is the base of what you want to do as a transition to mid game. Once you can clear all of that, and actually in the transition to mid game, you could sort of think about PvP a little bit. You could probably be able to end. Not. Can you end Fighter 3 at this level? I would say maybe like Fighter 2 or 3 at this level. Once you get Fighter 2 or 3, you get a reasonable amount of crystals at the end of the week that make you sort of want to start investing in some PvP to get some crystals and stuff. And you might also be in a farming guild at this point. So that's sort of what you want to dabble with once you get to this phase. To get to the transition to mid game, it would take you probably, if you play a reasonable amount, I guess you could say. If you play a reasonable amount, I think this would take you 6 months 6 months if you're like casual, not playing as much. You get on like in 2 to 3 hours in a day, and you sort of just do stuff. This would take getting to this part might take you about 6 months. Uh, Obviously, this time varies. It varies depending on the monsters you summon, how lucky you got on runes. It depends on how much you play. It could take you 2 months to get to the stage, honestly. But I would say that that's very unlikely. It would take you about maybe 6 months on average case. So yeah, we'll talk about mid game. Most players are in the mid game. It's a very long phase. The next longest phase would be transition to late game and then late game itself. And okay, so mid game. Let's see what you are able to accomplish as a mid game account. This is what you should be able to accomplish. I'd say faster let's say it like this: consistent but faster. Times 10 team. So you could probably clear like previously we said like what 130 to 2, right? Is that what we said earlier? Yeah. So you probably can do like 1 minute to 130 average time at this point. Then let's see. Consistent but faster. Dragon's 10 team. At this point, you could probably do it in like 2 minutes, 2:30 average time. Might even be faster. Yeah, it could be faster. It really depends on where you are at in the game. COA 100 normal clear. You could probably also can clear COA 50 hard. You won't be able to clear the whole thing, I think, at mid game. That's what I think, at least. Let's think about this a bit. So, okay, in mid game, can clear Fighter 3 at the end of the week in Arena. Will be in the farming guild. Might be able to do R3. Yeah, I would say you might just be able to do R3. I wouldn't say R4, R5. And then, grade in elemental rifts. Probably like I'd probably say like an 8. A plus at max. So that's sort of what I think a mid-game player should be able to accomplish. That's what I think. So let's look at the transition to late game from mid-game. What you should be doing to transition into the late game. Okay? So let's talk about that for a little bit. Make fast teams for Giants 10. Make fast teams for Dragon 10. Okay? Make a Necro team at this point. You start wanting Necro at this point because Necro as a dungeon is a late game, in-game sort of dungeon. It's not really a mid-game level dungeon. You don't necessarily need any of the sets early on, right? Like, you don't really need Will, you don't really need Vampire, you don't really need Rage. Rage is substituted by Fatal in the beginner, early, and mid-game. You don't necessarily need Vampire until you want to do R5 and stuff. So you don't really need Necro until you get to transitioning to the late game part of the game. So, yeah, make a Necro 10 team, right? Let's see. The average time for this would probably be like 45 to 1 minute average time. Dragon's 10 would probably be like 1 Yeah, about 1 minute to 1:45 average time. It depends on how you want to do it. You can make it more consistent. You can do other stuff. You know what I mean? And a necro team at this point, you probably want like a 2 minute to 2:30 average time for now. What you want to be playing with here? Let's look at what I missed. Okay, so at this point, be able to clear TOA 100 normal. If not, you could probably like almost clear TOA hard. If not, clear it. So probably might get stuck at floors not at 80 to 93. I say 93 because ragdoll stage. So you would probably get stuck there, maybe. Transitioning to late game, you can definitely clear Conk 1 to 2 in the transitional phase. You'll still be in a farming guild at this point. You're still going to be in a farming guild at this point. The level of players moving up continually goes higher. I'm gonna say this, guys. There will always be more late game players than there is any other type of player in the game because of how long the game has been out. At the same time, once you get the late game, it's not gonna be that hard to maintain it. Like, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. So you'll still be in a farming guild. Make a team that can do R4, maybe R5. You might be a little inconsistent still, and then grade in elemental rifts. You're gonna be flirting. You're gonna be flirting with S. You'll be flirting with S at this point. It really depends on what monsters you summon. It depends on how well your rune luck serves you. It depends on a lot of factors like that. So yeah, let's talk about the late game, guys. Let's talk about the late game. A good chunk of players are in this stage of the game, that I know of at least. I mean, I could be completely wrong. There might be more mid-game players. And I would have to apologize for that. You know, I feel like most people that have been playing for a while should be able to get to the late game. So let's talk about... Let's see. What can you do as a late game player? Okay? What can you do as a late game player? So, fast Giants 10. I'm not going to talk about times anymore. Fast Dragons 10. Necro 10. You should be able to do that. Clear TOA 100 norm and 100 hard. Have reasonable world boss scores. Probably you're gonna be floating like SS8 plus. You might be flirting with that for world boss scores at late game. Let's see. You could probably clear Conk 2 to Guardian 1. It depends on what monsters you summon, it depends on how lucky you get, all that sort of factors. Most people are going to be in like Conk 2, maybe even Conk 3. Guardian 1 is special cases. I know very few players that can get Guardian 1 from this phase, but it's definitely possible. I mean, people that are like 80 to 96 star monsters, you can definitely probably get G1 with the right tools. And also, because not as many people are really trying in Arena that I know of, so yeah, that also takes into account, so you could probably get G1. So you can probably start looking at a G2, low G3 guild at this point. They'll probably accept 66 star monsters to 96 star monsters. Also depends on your runes and stuff. So you can flirt with G2, low G3 guilds. They'll probably let you in. you'll have an R4 team at this point, if not an R5 team. Okay, and let's see, grade in elemental rifts. You'll probably be S in most elemental rifts. Maybe SS or SSS. Depends on the monsters that you pull. Depends on the runes that you get. Really depends, right? It's really subjective. So I think we covered all of that for late game. Let's talk about transitioning to end game. We're talking about the big boy leagues. Big boy leagues, guys. You know what? I forgot to include something. Let's talk about RTA. RTA, you can probably get Conk in a late game. I don't know about G1. I don't know about G2. Definitely, probably not G3. Highly improbable. But you can definitely get Conk. I don't know about Guardian 1. I think that the competition is really tight in Guardian 1 already. About like 5,000 players get Guardian 1 or higher. So I'd say reasonably you'd be about Conk. So let's talk about transitioning to the end game, right? Okay. What you should do to get into the end game, okay, guys? Okay, guys. What you should be doing. Okay. Fast Giants 10, fast Dragons 10. I say Necro 10. You can't really make a fast Necro 10. You can make a pretty fast one, but not like a speed team, I guess you could say, because of how the Necro boss works and all that stuff. Clear 2 away, 100 and 100 hard, mostly on auto. You should be able to have reasonable world boss scores. Okay, so I mean you'd probably be flirting with something like SSS. A plus or S. That's probably where you'd be floating, transitioning up. That's what I think. So here you can probably start looking at low G3 to G3 guilds. I wouldn't say that you might make it into a top 10 guild. Top 10 guilds are very hard to get into. They might ask you to be really good at RTA. They might ask you to be high on rune value. They might ask you to have really good monster options. So I wouldn't say a top 10 guild necessarily. You'd have to be probably in game to get into those. Okay, so let's see. I talked about Guild Wars. Okay, I forgot to mention. You could probably. Okay, so you can clear. I'd say C3 to G2. At this point, probably C3 to G2. Again, depends on your interest in Arena. Also depends on what monsters you summon. So it varies from C3 to G2. You can definitely get G2 at this point. Arena is not that difficult. It really isn't. Okay, so at this point, you should have an R5 team. Okay, you should have an R5 team. And then grade in elemental rifts. You probably get what? SS. Okay, you might get SS or SSS in most dungeons. If you, yeah. So I mean, if you don't get SS or SSS, it'd probably be consistent, if not consistent, S in elemental rifts. So you can probably very efficiently get reappraisal stones at this point. And yeah. Let's see, what did we miss? We missed RTA. RTA, probably C3 to... Could you get G2 at this point? I would say yes. You can get G2 RTA at this point. Depends on your monsters. It really depends on your monsters. Most people are going to be C3, G1. The lucky people, they can get G2. At this point in the game, they can get G2. So let's talk about endgame, guys. Let's talk about endgame. I mean, this will be fast. Giant. So fast Giants 10. Fast Dragons 10. Yeah. Consistent Necro 10. What else can you do? Clear TOA 100 norm and hard. On auto, with exceptions to some bosses. At this point, also, world boss scores. Your world boss scores would probably look like SSS or SS, SS or S, and then maybe like you probably, I don't know. It depends. It really depends on how good you are in the game. So these are the scores that you might be looking at. I put variety in there. I end at SS, SSS, and A+. I mean, I don't really focus on world boss too much. I probably should. I mean, it's not that big, you know what I mean? It's not that big, but it's nice to have, you know. Like if you could get G2 in world boss, that's extra crystals for you. So you should probably work on it. Let's see, what did we miss? Okay, so you can look at G3 to top 10 guilds. Top 10 guilds. Tight competition to get into top 10 guilds. You gotta be a special sort of someone to get into those guilds nowadays, in my opinion. You gotta be good at RTA. You have to have a big name. You have to have reasonable stats. Like, they don't just let anyone to top 10 guilds. You can definitely make a G3 guild with 101 or something 6-star monsters with decent rune quality and decent options for monsters. But making it to top 10, I feel like you gotta be pretty up there. Not pretty up there, but respectable. Like, the people recruiting you would have to really like what you bring to the table. So, okay, so here you can clear probably G1 to G3 at this point, and you'll have an R5 team. Okay, let's say it like this: a consistent R5 team. You'll have a consistent R5 team, maybe a fast one. So grades in Elemental Rifts, mainly SSS or SS for Elemental Rifts. In RTA, you'd probably be ending G1 to G3. Yeah, G3 players, they're only going to be consisting of the best players that have the best monster options and all that stuff. I think that's the cutoff for in-game. You should be able to do all those sort of stuff. Let's see if I missed anything. I don't think so. So yeah, we covered almost every single part of the game. So that's, okay, so let's do a recap real quick, right? Let's do a recap real quick. Okay. Do a recap real quick. Okay. So there's 9 phases to an account. There's beginner. You're starting to farm 6-star monsters. You're starting to make a Giants 10. You're starting to play a little around with TOA normal to get some of the rewards. Okay, then you go to early game. You have a reasonable amount of 6-star monsters now. You're able to make a consistent Giants 10. You get useful runes from your Giants 10 to make a Dragons 10 team. You might float around the idea of completing TOA normal. Okay, so you're transitioning to the early game. So early game, you should have a Giants 10 team by now. You should be able to get far in TOA, if not clear it already. Then key monsters, you should know the key monsters for TOA and all that stuff. If you haven't already, use the Varomos. Play around the idea of making a consistent Dragon 10 team. And yeah, so then we talked about transitioning to mid-game. To be able to transition to the mid-game, you should have a consistent Giants 10, a consistent Dragon 10, be able to clear TOA normal 100, be able to clear Fighter 2 or 3 in Arena, and you might be in a farming guild at this point, so you can farm your Ifrits, your Guild War flags, and eventually scrolls. Very long process, but you know what I mean. So then we move on to mid-game. You should have a consistent and faster Giants 10 team. You should have a consistent and faster Dragons 10 team. TOA 100 normal clear. You could probably get to TOA 50 hard at this point also. You should be able to clear Fighter 3 at this point. You can make it into a farming guild for sure. You might be able to do R3. I'm not so sure. You might have to scope it based on your runes and monsters. Grade in Elemental Rifts, probably A+. You could farm reappraisals at this point, but it'll be pretty inconsistent. So let's see what you have to do to transition to the late game. You'd have a reasonable amount of 6-star monsters. You'll probably do okay in World Boss. Might do just okay in World Boss. You'll have a fast. You'll start making a fast team for Giants 10. You'll start making fast teams for Giants 10. You'll make a Necro 10 team because that's when you start needing low runes, vamp runes specifically. You might want rage runes also, but I'd say they're lower priority once you get to a higher level. That's just what I think. You'll be able to clear TOA 100 normal. You might be able to clear TOA hard. You can get C1, C2 at this point. You will be in a farming guild. You will be able to make a team for R4, and then you might have one that might do R5, but it might be a little iffy. You know what I mean? And grades in Elemental Rifts, you'll be flirting with S grade level. So let's talk about the last three phases, which is late game. Oh wait. Yeah, late game, transitioning to in game and end game. So you'll have a fast Giants 10, a fast Dragon 10, a Necro 10 team, clear TOA 100 normal and hard, have reasonable world boss scores. You might be able to clear C2 to Guardian 1. You'll probably be looking at a G2 or low G3 guild. You'll have an R4 team, if not an R5 team already. You should have an R5 team in my opinion at this point. Grade in Elemental Rifts, mostly going to be S's, and then you might get SS or SSS. And in RTA, you could probably get Conk. And we'll talk about transitioning to the end game. What should you have at this point? A fast Giants 10, a fast Dragon 10, a Necro 10. Be able to clear TOA 100 and 100 hard, mostly on auto. Have reasonable world boss scores. Okay. You should probably be looking at a low G3 guild at this point. You can probably clear C3 to G2 in Arena. You want to clear as high as you can in Arena so you get more crystals for free. It saves you money and time, in my opinion. You should have an R5 team at this point. Most of your grades in Elemental Rifts will be SS or SSS. And RTA, you're probably going to be ending C3 to G2. I would say probably go for G1 or G2 for the extra rewards. I mean, it's a pain in the ass, let's be honest here, but if you can do it, definitely do it. Okay, then in-game, it varies from where you are, but you'll have a fast Giants 10, a fast Dragons 10, a consistent Necro 10. You'll be able to clear most of TOA on auto, with the exception of a few stages. World boss scores will look pretty good. You want to look at a G3 or a top 10 guild at this point, and you want to be able to clear G1 to G3 in Arena. At the same time, you'll have a consistent R5, and you might have a fast R5, depending on what you summoned. And grades for Elemental Rifts, it'll mainly be SSS or SS. Depends on what you have for your monsters and stuff. And in RTA, you should be able to end G1 to G3. So I felt like it was pretty important to talk about the phases of an account to sort of scope where you are and what you can do at these stages in an account. And yeah, I mean, tell me what you guys thought in the comments, if this was really helpful, if you want to see more of this. This is more informational sort of stuff, and I'm really good at informational sort of Summoner's War. So tell me what you guys think. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much.